Hello, I'm Odin, and today I'm going to make a creature. I'm going to make a facehugger. Rubber monsters is what got me started making props way back in the day, so it's time to do one now. I'm going to use the NECA toy as my example and model to get started. I know that I want the legs, or fingers, to be posable, and the tail too. So I plan on using wire coat hangers, mostly because they're cheap. Aluminum armature wire purchased from an art supply store would be softer and easier to pose. To keep the cut ends of the wire from poking out of the fingertips, I bend a loop on the end of each wire and on the tail. My plan is to make the basic shape of the body with open cell polyfoam. This is half-inch thick foam that I got from Walmart. Polyfoam is easy to glue together with contact cement, and you can press the edges together and get a rounded seam. With the body covered, I cut pieces that fit over the lungs and then glue them together. Then I cut out some 8-inch strips of foam for the fingers, and I cut the tip on a bevel. That way they'll be easier to roll into fingertips with the contact cement. I attach the lungs, and I'm not worried about the seams in the back because it'll be covered. I glue on each finger. The foam does not make a perfect round tube when it's rolled, so I attach each finger with the seam up so the underside of the fingers are more rounded. To make the tail, I want to cut a 34-inch long strip of foam, pointed at one end and 8 inches wide at the other. I'll add glue to the cut edges and stick it together just like the fingers. I want to add the back of the hand bones on each side of the facehugger, so I cut some small strips of foam and glue them on with spray adhesive. To make the indents in the fingers, I simply put a small rubber band where I want the wrinkles to be. Then I add a series of rubber bands all down the tail to make the segmented sections. I'm not worried about gluing them in place now. I'm going to cover them over when I add the skin later. To add knuckles onto the fingers, I just cut some little pieces of foam, and blue painter's tape will hold them in place so I can use spray glue. I stick them where I want the knuckle bulge to be, and then I add some more rubber bands. The look of facehuggers has changed over the years, and instead of continuing the tail up and across the back, I'm going to make a carapace from 5mm craft foam. I use a heat gun to warm the EVA foam, and to make a rounded, face, and I'll curve the carapace pieces. Then I use a Dremel to grind marks into each piece, and glue everything on with contact cement. And now it's going to need a manicure. So I picked up the cheapest set of nails that I could find at Walmart, and glue nails onto each finger. The kit came with super glue, so I used it. The ventral side is the business end of the facehugger. This is where the ovipositor is, and lots of interesting wrinkles. To make up the mini folds and the tip of the ovipositor, I start with tiny strips of foam. I'll build up on those details when I add the skin. So I got the basic shape. I'm very happy with the details that I've got here. You could just spray paint it at this point and be done. Spray paint on this foam usually ends up becoming very scratchy and rough. I don't want to do that. I'd rather skin it. And what I want to do is skin it with latex rubber and tissue paper. And what that's going to do is cover over all the foam, give it a uniform skin texture, and I can push the tissue paper around a little bit and get wrinkles and veins. Latex rubber is not harmful to your skin unless you have an allergy, so I'm not worried about wearing gloves, just don't get it in your hair. I'm just brushing on the latex, which is easy, but it's not the fastest. You can spray latex on with a spray gun and an air compressor, and it'll take a lot less time, and it'll use less latex. Latex can have a really strong ammonia smell, and if you're using it, make sure you're in a well-ventilated area. I've got a fan blowing at me. Latex rubber dries by evaporation, so the fan speeds it up. The latex rubber and tissue paper will seal the rubber bands in place so they won't move around. And since rubber bands and latex are the same material, they'll break down at about the same rate. And by the time the rubber bands break down from age, the latex skin is going to be pretty crumbly too. So let the facehugger sit all night long with a couple of fans blowing on him, and the latex has completely dried. And he's still very lightweight and much more soft than the toy. But he's totally the wrong color. And since he's coated in latex, I don't want to just paint him with anything. I mean, I could spray paint him, but spray paint won't stick to the latex long term. It'll flake off. I could paint him with acrylic. That'll actually stick really well, but as I flex him, it'll still come off. The one thing that does stick is an old school thing done when they did a lot of monsters and makeup out of foam latex and latex rubber, and it's called PAX paint. PAX is a mixture of prosthetic aid or portrayed and Liquitex acrylic paint. The two of these mixed together creates a paint glue that sticks to the latex, and once it's dried, you can then continue to paint with other colors on top of it, and it becomes permanent. I know this from experience because of the Guar costumes that we did in the 90s. I mix the paints to get a sickly skin tone for the hugger, and then I add some portrayed to it. Now, I don't worry about the ratio. Some places say it's 50-50 glue and paint. Mine is more like 30% glue and 70% paint. Using a sponge to apply PAX has always worked the best for me. Brushing it on just puts lots of streaks into it. The prosthetic adhesive is safe to use on your face. I'm just wearing gloves to keep my hands clean. Since this is a glue, it'll remain tacky after it dries. I'm not worried about it, but if you want the tack to go away, just apply baby powder to the PAX and then rinse it off with water. The powder will disappear, and so does the tacky. And they also sell a low-tack portrayed just for making PAX. Once the facehugger has a base coat, I can use craft paints and water to cover everything in a dark wash, and occasionally I'll wipe some of the high areas clean. Then I mix up a lighter shade of the skin tone and selectively dry brush areas I want lighter, like the top of the tail and those tendon veins on the back. On the underside, I paint everything a couple of shades of red and pink and apply a dark wash and a spot of black. Now I want this area to look wet, so a gloss coat of acrylic floor wax will keep it shine and it sticks to the paint. All the materials I used in this project were picked up locally, and I put a part list in the description. Even though he's painted with glue, once I have all the other paints on, he really isn't sticky anymore. And now that I have my facehugger finished, I don't need this guy anymore. This one can go right back on eBay. Now remember, there's lots of different ways that you can make a rubber monster, but this is how Odin makes. If you like this video or have other ideas for something for me to make, please leave them in the comments below. And if you make any of these projects, you can send me a picture at odin@odinmakes.com. There's lots of different ways that you can make a pocket, but this is how Odin...